Steve's journey began with a childhood fascination for bikes. He built his first one at the age of just 8. Fast forward to his teenage years, and he was already racing mountain bikes in Devon. But life had other plans, and he joined the Royal Marines, serving across the globe in places like Northern Ireland, Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. In 2011, tragedy struck when an IED explosion left him severely injured. Yet, from adversity, Steve emerged with a new purpose. He founded LIOS Bikes, a brand synonymous with custom carbon bicycles, titanium frames, and personalized bike fittings. Today, Steve wears multiple hats: entrepreneur, racing driver, and motivational speaker. His journey from military service to creating cutting-edge bikes is a story that I know you'll enjoy hearing. Was there a screw it, just do it moment that ultimately took you from the path that you were on in the military to what you're doing now?
There was. Initially, I had no choice in being medically discharged from the Marines because of my injuries. But early on in my rehabilitation journey, my first physio, she had actually made it pretty clear that my military career was over, as was my sporting career. And I suppose it was at that moment where I had to decide what I was going to do myself. You know, do I follow the well-trodden path of finance into the city like a lot of officers do? Or do I, screw it, just do it, set up my own business? So that's probably the first time, using your mantra, I did that.
Okay. And take me back to 2011, second operational tour for you in Afghanistan. You were leading 175 Royal Marines, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember from that?
I suppose I'm quite lucky. A lot of the guys and girls, they don't remember a lot of what happened when they get blown up during that day. Whereas I can remember right up to being carried onto the helicopter and the surgeons on board put me to sleep. So
okay, yeah.
I think that's probably helped me at the time deal with everything mentally. And because I wasn't searching for those memories, I had them.
Yeah.
My brain was able to, work through them and deal with it. Speaking to a lot of friends that have been through similar situations, certain guys struggle because they're still searching for those memories of the brain is.
Yeah.
I kind of remember it all.
Okay. And I read, I remember it at the time, from watching the news and stuff, but the area you were operating was considered to be like the most dangerous square mile on planet Earth, or anywhere else for that matter.
Yeah, I think that was termed by Chris Terrell,
right?
The TV producer who's done a lot of work with the military and the Marines. He was actually, so just a quick bit of background. I was in command of Juliet Company 42 Commando, Helmand Province, and we were in what's called Nadi Ali North. My company's role was what's called ground holding. So we had a number of checkpoints that we had to secure and then run patrols for them to provide security to the local populations, let them go about their day. And essentially, we didn't have a lot of police or Afghan National Army attached to us, which made it a lot more difficult because you want an Afghan face. We didn't really have that. But we were that was the role we had, and that's what we did on a day-to-day basis. But we also had the ability, because of the size of the company, to mount discretionary operations outside of our area of operation.
And you say you remember everything that happened to you, so like with the IED.
So we were crossing this river, probably about 5 to 6 meters to the side, going through the river. I was about seventh in line in the patrol, 5 meter spacings in between each. And as I was in the bottom of the riverbed, 2 guys detonated. There was a command wire, so we now know they were targeting me specifically. They knew I was the commander.
Really?
So they were waiting for me, and then they triggered it. So right arm, big hole in my chest, just under my armpit. So at the time, my arm was kind of back, which is probably how I didn't lose my arm. I think if my arm was forward in front to the side of me, it probably would have taken my arm off.
Wow. Okay.
But I had a big hole in my chest, and then the body armor, my plate, protected my lower torso, hole in my femur, fractured femur, and then I had a pistol on my right leg, so that saved a lot of my right leg. And then it kind of
did it.
So the shrapnel peppered me for kind of armpit, top of leg, through the knee.
Yeah.
So it was my chest injury that was the worst, where it kind of torn through the rib cage, made a real mess of my insides. And so I was full of shrapnel, But they put me to sleep on the helicopter that picked me up, and they did initial operations in Camp Bastion, and then decided, look, you know what, we've done what we can here. We'll just staple him together and put him in an induced coma, and then let the UK deal with him when he got back. And what happens as you start to come out of the coma, my eyes would open. I didn't know this was happening, but people would say, oh, his eyes open, then they closed again. Yeah. Your eyes open, your brain takes on the surroundings and turns into something completely different. And it's called intensive care psychosis. It took me probably a week after I came out of the coma to believe that I hadn't been captured and tortured by the Taliban.
No way.
So one of my memories was that I was being held captive in Kazakhstan in a tented hospital. And these nightmares are so real. So I'm recounting this story, and one of the surgeons was like, oh, yeah, we didn't tell your families, but we were doing a routine operation on you, and because you're in a coma, we don't need to put you to sleep. And mid operation, I pulled the ventilator tube out my throat, all the lines out of my neck, all the feeding lines and drains and drips and everything.
And how much of that was explained to you afterwards?
They just said, oh, that's just because of the coma, that's because of the drugs. There wasn't any detail. It was only when I started to ask questions and probe. And interestingly, somebody sent me an article, this was again a few months later. He got ill from something random and then ended up being really ill and was in an induced coma. And he talked about intensive care psychosis and done loads of research into it. And so that then really opened up my floodgate for questions. So when I go back for my consultations, I'd be like, look, what does this mean? What does that mean? And then I got a much better understanding of it. It was a phenomenon. So I was in intensive care for 5 weeks, 3 weeks in the coma, just under. And then I was on the ward for a very short period before they released me to Headley Court. And they just couldn't believe that, you know, from being in a coma, not to do anything for yourself, my kind of progress in the first few weeks was so rapid. You know, I had a young family. It was like, okay, I need to find something where I'm going to earn money. You start reading all the business books and, you know, the stats, whatever it is, you know, 70% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. And I thought, well, what am I passionate about? Well, it was this cycle industry. Can I do something? And so the idea kind of evolved whilst I was in rehab. And I was lucky I had the time outside of the rehab. You know, the work you do, you'd finish at 4, so you still, you got hours in the day, and you also had that period in between your rehab sessions when you're back at home. So I'm like, well, I'm still getting paid here. Now is the time to try and set this up so that as and when I get medically discharged, hopefully the business is up and running. And I was lucky to that's how it worked out.
And how did you get your first customers?
So I owe a lot to my first ever customer. I will say her name. I'm sure she won't mind. Francie Clarkson, Jeremy's ex-wife. She was, incredible supporter of injured folk. Patron for Help for Heroes.
Okay. And so looking back, so like learnings side of it as well. What piece of advice would you give to anyone to help them get from where they currently are to where they want to be?
You've got to have faith in yourself, and it's the whole. I know it's cliched, but you've got to have some serious dedication and resilience. I get up at 5 every day, do 12 hours a day, and it's still not enough.
Thanks for watching this episode of Screw It, Just Do It. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below this video, as this episode helped move you closer to where you want to be. All that I ask is that if you enjoyed this episode and then it's moved you closer to getting to where you want to be, that you share this episode so that it helps one other person do just the same. Just ask yourself what small action will move you forward to get you from where you are, then screw it and just do it. Until next time.